Hey guys, this is going to be a different kind of video. So today is March 17th and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. I'm sure all of you are aware of this since you don't live under a rock and you kind of have heard of COVID-19, or as a lot of people refer to it, the coronavirus. Originally started in China, in one of those kind of wet markets that exist out there. Just kind of it's a breeding ground for diseases and things like that, just because of the trouble to keep things as sanitary with all the different animals and stuff that sort of live in that sort of environment. If you're not as familiar with what a wet market is, you guys can check out stuff and look up stuff. We're not going to be focusing too much on where it started. We're going to be focusing on what's going on now and what that kind of has to do with me and how things are going, at least in the US. So, for those that do not know, because I don't talk about it as much, I've talked about it in previous videos, but I am what people refer to as immunocompromised, or I have a autoimmune disorder. I have Crohn's disease, which is basically where my immune system attacks my digestive system because it thinks it's a foreign body, and you know how white blood cells work: attack all the foreign things that are inside your body, get rid of all the sickness. So they think my digestive system is a sickness, so I take a bunch of meds that actively try to weaken my immune system, which means that I am more at risk for getting sick. And if I do get sick, there's a good chance that I will get sick worse than most people because I have a weakened immune system. Because this is a global pandemic and it is something that most people don't have any way of fighting against, it makes it very hard. And I say most people because everybody in the world has no way of fighting against. If you think about your history lesson for a second, because I'm a history nerd, we're going to hop back. Back when all the explorers came over to what is referred to as the New World, North, South America, all that kind of good stuff. All of the natives that lived here did not have any immune systems that could help them fight against all of those lovely diseases like smallpox, the bubonic plague, all those fun stuff that you kind of learned about in history. So a lot of native people died off because of these diseases. So the entire world doesn't have any way of actively fighting against this new virus. It was originally described as a disease that kind of targeted older generation, and because it is a upper respiratory disease, people talk about flu-like symptoms, but really it's a upper respiratory infection. Makes it harder to breathe and things like that, along with having a fever and all the other fun stuff that comes along with it. But it's originally targeted for older people because they have a harder time being able to fight it off, weakened immune systems, all that kind of normal stuff. But not only does it affect older people, but other people that have serious medical conditions. So diabetics are also higher risk. If you have heart disease, lung diseases, or in my case, weakened immune system, it makes me jump into that kind of, mild case to the potential to have a severe case. And a lot of countries around the world have closed off their borders, shut things down. Pretty much their entire countries have shut down to try to fight against this because it spreads so quickly. Partly because it can survive on surfaces for hours to days at a time. So that's why people are like, wash your hands, clean your counters, clean your phones, clean as many surfaces as you can, using soap, using all those different things to help kill these germs. And then that social distancing that people are talking about that has been able to work in other countries, like China, right? That they're able to shut things down, like 100% complete isolation, separating people. Hey, we're not dealing with this. They're just kind of shut down Italy. France is shut down. Like, things are getting bad all over the world, and lots of people are dying from this. Because it's so serious, it's basically creating two groups, if you will. There's the group that understands how serious it is, or they know somebody that fits the category of, hey, you're at a higher risk. I am in constant contact with like an older person, or I might know somebody that has heart disease, or I might know someone that has lung disease or diabetic, or they might have these contacts like, okay, I understand that this is serious. I'm going to distance myself and make sure that if I do get sick, I won't pass it on to somebody that is more at risk, or I'll make sure, that I'm keeping myself safe so I don't get sick, even if their case might be mild, right? And then you have the other camp that might understand it, but doesn't think it's a big deal. Or they go, I'm not around people like that. Why do I need to do this self-isolation? Why do I need to do this social distancing from people? You know what? I can go out to Costco with 200 other people and try to stock up and get in on this panic buying thing, which is a whole nother thing about why people are panic buying. But it's going to be very difficult for our country to fight this pandemic because people are not willing to do what's in the best interest for everybody. We're a individualist style society where it's all about me, 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 me. And it's going to come back to hurt us in the long run, where we're such a consumer-oriented culture. When there are people that are not able to make money, it's going to have a huge impact on things. So if you are in a restaurant, you own a restaurant, or you're working in a restaurant, you're working in a bar, you are now in an additional stress of not only we're dealing with a virus and a pandemic that is not something that your body has an immune system to kind of fight against, or the immunity built up in your system. A lot of people have the immune system to fight it, but you now have an added stress of how am I going to make money to pay my mortgage or buy food and things like that. Because if they're closing all the bars and restaurants, or they're limiting it to, hey, we're only doing pickup, right, takeout, that sort of stuff, it's going to drastically reduce that. Anybody that is in the events business have lost a lot of events. I keep seeing day and day all these events getting canceled. I live near Winchester, Virginia, and they have just canceled Apple Blossom, which is a huge event which brings in about 40,000 people, right, come into this area, and it's an event that's been taking place since the 50s. Right? It's old, maybe even older than the 50s, but they've had huge celebrities come in. They've had presidents come in for this event in the past. It's huge, and they've canceled this. So it's like there's so many ripple effects that are going to be taking place that from this pandemic that people are not as ready to deal with. And it's just one of those things that in my position where I do have this weakened immune system, I can kind of notice all these extra stresses that are taking place in the community around where I am. But I'm still in this weird position because I'm a teacher, but I'm teaching in a mental health facility that is in a way like a hospital. So we don't close. We're open year round. So I'm still there, even though we've officially got the notice from the Department of Education that we are no longer having school. I still need to be there to help support the kids and help support the other staff there to make sure things are okay, which adds an extra layer, because if anybody on campus were to get sick, then I could potentially get seriously sick from it. So it kind of brings up that question, okay, as long as I am practicing this good social distancing, even at work, when I have to be there, making sure that I'm not putting myself at more risk, I should be okay. But if other people are not practicing this, then it still makes it challenging for me. I don't know. It's very difficult to be put in this sort of position where you don't have any control. I know a lot of people are able to telecommute and work from home and are in different positions. A lot of other teachers that work in public schools, their schools are closed and people are trying to deal with this. If you have to work, but now the schools are closed and you no longer have childcare essentially. How does that kind of add to the stress load of things, like all the single parents that might be out there? It's going to be a very challenging set of months coming up for the United States, because if anybody was studying the projections as this virus spread from China to Korea and to the rest of the world from there, even seeing how Italy and France started out as kind of, hey, practice this social distancing, do this, wash your hands, all this stuff, to we're shutting down the country. Borders are closed. You guys need to stay inside. We're having police out to make sure you're staying inside. Don't go out to bars and restaurants. Don't go anywhere. You can go to the doctor. You can go to a grocery store if you need to. That's it. You don't need to go anywhere else. To the United States, and now we're in that early stages of, oh, hey, social distancing. Here's a case here. Here's a case there. And nobody really took it seriously at first. And even leading up to it, I think a big reason for that is during that SARS outbreak years ago, when things exploded in China and it started cropping up around the world, it got to Canada, but it never really had a major effect on the United States. This is very different, and I think people look back and like, we're the United States, we're across the ocean, why do we need to worry as much? And I think all those people that weren't taking it as seriously then are now starting to realize just how serious it is. And maybe people haven't caught up yet. Right? How I said there was like those two camps and those two views, where there's people that understand how serious it is, and there's those that might not yet. And I hope that everybody can start to realize just how serious this can become for people, especially people like me that don't have the same immune system to be able to fight against this sort of disease here. It's going to be really interesting over the next coming months to see what happens and how strict everything gets in the United States. And I think the states that are being more strict are going to have a better chance of fighting against this and doing better about containing it. States that are going to be a little bit more willy-nilly about the restrictions, still letting people gather. I mean, the CDC is constantly putting up new information for it. And if anybody's wondering, I'll put that link down below in case you need to check out some of the information, because that is the best source to look at for recommendations, not just looking at the news, not just listening to what other people are saying, but check CDC and their guidelines and what they're recommending, because this information has been changing drastically over the last couple of days, the last week in particular, where they're like, hey, social distancing, start this, don't gather with more than 200 people. Okay, 100 people, all right, 50 people, all right, 10, right? Don't be anywhere with more than 10 people. We need to stop being around people, right? And it's just kind of accelerating just with how quickly this is spreading, because it can live on surfaces for days, because you can easily be contagious and not know it. You can go 2 weeks without showing symptoms, so you could be sick and not realize it. Not to mention there are not enough tests in the United States, and that's a whole nother issue that I'm not going to get into, because I don't want to make this into a big political discussion. I just want to make it related to what's going on, my thoughts on things, and I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. How are things going in your state? How are things going in your country? What is life like right now dealing with the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it? How are you managing it? Did you get sucked into that panic buying? Have you gone out to the store multiple times? Have you stored up a lot of stuff? Do you have enough stuff to be able to survive if you have to self-quarantine? And that's the other thing. If you end up getting sick, you're supposed to isolate yourself for 2 weeks to make sure that you do not pass this virus on to other people. So, how are things going? We are stocked up. We have enough supplies. We're okay. If my wife or I do get sick, we'll be set up and okay in that regard, but I just want to hear how things are going for everybody else. But a little bit of a different video, you know, figure why not talk about things that are going on in the world briefly this time. You know, let me know, leave a comment. Let's get some discussion going about this. I'd love to hear from you guys. But yeah, that's going to do it. I'll see you guys next video.